The dream of a perfect season is dead. A national championship still alive and maybe I don't know. We'll see. There are a lot of thoughts to get into as Ohio State let one of their goals slip away on Saturday night. 13-10 loss to Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. Then on Sunday, confirmation of a return to the Cotton Bowl. Ohio State is still the number 2 seed, but I have a feeling on the Boren Blitz on the Austin and Burn Show presented by Waterworks that maybe there won't be a lot of celebrating the college football playoff berth and more picking apart what happened on Saturday night with Zach Boren. Am I right?
Yeah, it's a little tough, especially with the way the season has went. You beat Michigan and Ann Arbor. You have all the momentum going into it. You think you're going to, you're going to Indy for the first time in 5 years. You think you're going to win that game, have the number 1 seed, go to the Rose Bowl, do those things. Sometimes, man, college football is crazy nowadays. It doesn't always go as planned, right? And last year, Ohio State was hoisting that trophy at the end of the year as national champs with 2 losses, right? And so now, guess what? You got 1 loss. How are you going to respond to it? We saw how the Buckeyes responded last year. Question marks on this year. You got a bunch of challenging games coming up. You're going to have to run the same gauntlet, similar to what you did last year, minus 1 game. Sometimes getting life put in perspective, especially in a locker room like that of 18 to 22-year-old kids, not the worst thing.
I just feel like I'm having these flashbacks, Zach. I mean, I looked at the scoreboard. You were in Indianapolis. You were at Lucas Oil Stadium, and we see 13-10 up there. That obviously rings a bell. But the things that you're talking about right now, like, you have these losses. You have the issues exposed that you can't deny. They're staring you right in the face. You lose the game and you have to face them. You have to adjust. You got punched in the face. You have to react to that. This is the exact same conversation that you and I had last December. So, maybe your history will repeat itself. That's the challenge that's out there now. There's nothing that Ohio State can do to change what happened. The Hoosiers won the game. They're a really good team. And all the stuff that we're going to talk about, which are going to be, I think, largely self-inflicted errors and wounds for Ohio State on Saturday night. I don't mean to take away. It's going to sound like I'm diminishing the accomplishment for the Hoosiers. I'm not trying to do that. But Ohio State, I think, is clearly the better team overall. That's still my opinion. I think if they have a rematch, I'd be surprised if Ohio State plays as poorly, as disjointedly, as confused, as distracted as it seemed to be on Saturday. To me, I don't think that would happen again. And part of that is because now they've got a wake-up call. And that's what it took a year ago. Now they needed that second one, and in some ways, before they went on that run in the college football playoff. But we're having the same conversation now that we did a year ago, and we all know what happened in the end of that playoff push.
We are. And to your point, I don't think we need to take anything away from Indiana. Being there at the game Saturday night, Indiana has some really good players. There are some studs on that team who can make plays. Here's the other thing about Indiana. They play really hard, like really, really, really hard. And that is that speaks of Curt Cignetti and what he's built in that program. Now, the caveat to that is you can tell Ohio State is way more talented at multiple positions, and they did not play anywhere up to par on Saturday night, especially from how Ohio State's played most of the year, right? And so you start up front with the offensive line. They gave up 6 sacks all year. Saturday night, they gave up 5, right? You want to start talking about the pressure stats. I think, with Tegra in the game, there was a havoc rate of like 26%. That's right. 1 every 4 plays. That is absolutely crazy that you are under attack and they were playing on your side of the football 1 every 4 plays. That's not Ohio State football. You go to the defensive side of the ball. Ohio State's defense has been lights out. We've talked about it. Maybe the best defense in all of college football. Well, guess what? There were some guys who had some rough days, right? Jermaine Matthews got beat twice. When has Jermaine Matthews gotten beat like that this year? Sometimes it takes those games for you to get beat, for you to get exposed. And I know exposed is a bad word, but for you to get exposed, to dig a little deeper, to realize like, hey, man, I was at the top of the mountain, but sometimes you got to get knocked back down to then climb back up, right? And I think we're having this conversation. There's such a sour taste in our mouth because this game Saturday night reminds everyone so much of the Michigan game last year, right? Outside of the score, it just didn't look like Ohio State was anywhere near who they really are as people, right? Like as a team. And I think you think back to the Oregon game last year, you're like, man, that was a really good football game, right? Back and forth, back and forth. Ohio State made a couple of mistakes. At the end of the day, you just lost the game. The game Saturday night left you leaving Lucas Oil Stadium just wanting more with all these questions like why, how, like all of these things. Ohio State had the ball twice inside the 10-yard line of Indiana and didn't score 1 point. Like there are so many question marks that I think has everyone so frustrated, which is why everyone's acting like the world is ending. But again, in this day and age of college football, guess what? There's a 12-team playoff. Sometimes to lose the game, it's the best time to lose it because now moving forward, you're going to learn a lot from that game. The players are going to learn a lot. People are going to refocus, and you've got a massive game coming up on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, no, huge against either Texas A&M or Miami. The thing that you mentioned there that I think is so relevant right now is that those two drives, when Ohio State made an adjustment, they took Tegra Shabola out at right guard, they put Gabe Van Sickle in, they marched down the field twice, they got down into the red zone, they got inside the 10-yard line. They had a chance to change that game to not just make it 13-13. I mean, if you don't put Julian Sayan's knee on the ground on a 4th and 1, and you punch both of those into a touchdown, suddenly this game has changed entirely to 24-13, and we're having such a very different conversation about an impressive win for the number one team that solidified that regular season. Now, I know that didn't happen. I'm not trying to change it, but they were so close, which is why I put this in this bucket of games kind of like Michigan a year ago, where it comes down to Ohio State beat itself. That's my opinion. If Indiana wants to, they can celebrate. Curt Cignetti can gloat. He can talk trash. He's got the trophy. Not taking that away from him, but that's my opinion of the game, is that Ohio State beat itself. But the reason that it beat itself, Zach, you and I have talked nitpicking the Mondays that we've done that. Well, it's red zone, it's short yardage. And what cost Ohio State in this game? Ryan Day says all the time that the issues are always there. Whether you win or lose, you need to pay attention to them no matter what. But we've seen the same approach all year long in the red zone, whether that's been 13 personnel, whether that's been 14 personnel, whether that's been using CJ Donaldson, whether that's been whatever, lack of creativity. It bit Ohio State in the biggest moment that it's faced all year with a trophy on the line. Now, the benefit, as you mentioned, is that it didn't actually cost Ohio State anything other than that ring and a silver football, because they only dropped to the 2 seed. They still have a first-round bye. They're still going into the national championship college football playoff with all that goal still to play for. But that's the one thing that we've talked about really all year, and it reared its head in a moment where it actually tangibly cost Ohio State something. And now I wonder, okay, well, what does that mean if you're playing Texas A&M or Miami in the Cotton Bowl? Are we done seeing this approach of just trying to, put extra physical bodies on the field and bang your head against the wall? Because when you're taking either Jeremiah Smith and or Carnell Tate off the field, it feels to me like you're really doing your opponent a favor.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at this with glass half full, Austin, real quick.
Okay, all right, let's do that.
13 and 14 personnel in short yardage in the red zone has not been working at all for Ohio State all year long. Now, in saying that, when you go 11 games in a row, beating your opponents by 15 points every single game, you're not going to sit there and do a self-scout and say, hey, this really isn't working. And so when you get into a game like Saturday night, when everything's on the line, and then you go back and it really starts to rear its head and show that, hey, listen, it's not working at all. We just haven't really brought much attention to it because we've been able to get around it all year, right? This final score doesn't show. We don't feel it when it's all said and done. Well, you felt it Saturday night, and it was glaring Saturday night. And so now you start moving forward, going into the Cotton Bowl, possibly a matchup against a very good Georgia defense, right? Like you're starting to get some legit defenses moving forward. So now it's like, how do you make adjustments? And I think they're in such a better position having this discussion now than call it that rearing its head in the Rose Bowl if they won that game against Indiana, right? And you're playing Oklahoma or Alabama, and you can't convert in the red zone and you lose that game and the season's over with, right? Now, I'm just going to throw out some questions. I don't know Nate Roberts. I don't know many of the tight ends in general. I will be the first to say I love throwing a fullback in a game and playing in a phone booth. I will raise my hand and say, God damn it, I love it, right?
Yeah.
Now, in saying that,
it'd be a problem if you weren't advocating for it.
Correct, right? Now the issue is I don't think Ohio State's set up for that kind of offense. They don't have someone who is going to bow their neck back and blow through a hole and say, hey, listen, running back, I'm going to go straight downhill and put my face mask in some dude's chest, and we're for sure getting 2 yards right here, right now. Just come up right on my ass. They don't have it, right? And so you start asking the questions of Saturday night, obviously it wasn't working on multiple occasions. Where is the Lincoln Kienholz package that they were messing around with for so long? If it's not working, why not throw him in, right? What was it, last year when they threw Caden McDonald in at fullback, right?
Yeah.
Or you're bringing in that Rhino package that they call it. Where is that? Like, get someone in there that's going to come straight downhill. If you want to live and die by 13 or 14 personnel, by all means do it. But the question should come up of, if you're going to do that, you need the right personnel in the game. And so that's where I guess I get the most frustrated, or where my questions come from, because if you continue to do it with Nate Roberts, who, is a true freshman, what's Nate Roberts, 240 pounds, 245 pounds, but still a taller dude. Like, he's not some meatball that's going to go up there and freaking get his head and be a road grader right in front of you. And so you have to be able to have someone who can do that, or get creative with Lincoln Kienholz, or what I say, and I'm sure the rest of Buckeye Nation saying it because we've seen it on social media and everything else, go to 12 personnel. Right? Spread them out. Have Carnell and Jeremiah both in the game. And now you are stressing defenses, and they have to have help outside. You're bringing guys outside the box, and now you can be creative with the run game.
Yeah. No, I mean, it has to be a question that is asked over these next 3 weeks as Ohio State's looking at that college ball playoff preparation. I want to make sure to remind you, if your holiday prep includes plumbing, drain, and furnace readiness, call the Waterworks and Hetter Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, your single source for home care services. They are standing by to take your call, 614-232-2222, or visit online at thewaterworks.com. So game planning, preparation, play calling, Zach. I think that was, I've got more questions on my own mind, but I know that Ohio State fans had plenty of them about Saturday night. Ryan Day said again on Sunday, Brian Hartline is calling plays. He's going to continue to call plays as he manages this double duty throughout the college ball playoff run. We know Brian Hartline's already on a plane to go down there and be introduced in Tampa. And I just wonder personally, and there's no way for me to prove it or know it. I'm not in the meeting rooms. I'm not in Brian Hartline's head. I'm not in Ryan Day's head, but that looked like a distracted team to me. And maybe I should say distracted coaching staff. That's probably a more, I don't think the players had any say in that. Could Tegra have executed better with some of those blocks? Of course. Does Jermaine Matthews want those deep balls back? Lorenzo Styles want some opportunities back? Of course. But I just had it felt to me like, especially coming off of the win in the Big House, was like, that was a really good game plan. That was a well-designed attack and great adjustments and all the other, like maybe the best offensive coordinator game that Brian Hartline had through 12 games. Well, one thing or several things changed since they won at the end of the regular season, and then they started the postseason, and that was Brian Hartline taking another job. You had Penn State trying to come after Matt Patricia to hire him. Ryan Day had to be involved with several recruiting battles that were going down the stretch as a result of the calendar. And I don't bring up any of that to say that it's an excuse for the coaching staff. I'm just trying to look at what happened on Saturday night, and I am not an X's and O's guy. You know that a billion times better than me, Zach. It looked like an out of character Ohio State team to me. And I wonder if all the other things that they had to deal with last week got them out of their routine, got them out of their comfort zone. I don't know, but that's like, I'm looking for an explanation for what happened. And that's sort of where I'm going.
Austin, they had to. You think about last week and you think about the recruiting drama that was going on. You think about Brian Hartline taking the job, late Tuesday night, kind of out of the blue, and that being shocking. You brought up Matt Patricia getting a phone call from Penn State, and that coaching staff, let alone Ryan Day, wasn't prepared for that phone call to happen. Like, there were so many things that happened last week that are so far out of their normal routine that Saturday night's performance looked like a coaching staff that was dealing with a lot of things outside of just their normal preparation. Like,
Right.
the game plans did not look fully prepared. The game plans looked like there was some confusion. You could tell there were a bunch of distractions. Like, that game plan looked like a distracted game plan, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everything that you just brought up looks like what kind of rolled out. And that's not an excuse for those guys. And they'll be the first ones to tell you that's not an excuse. They'll be the first to tell you that they need to be better and that last week may have gotten the best of them. But
Yeah.
guess what? Moving forward, now that you've got 3 weeks to prepare for a college football quarterfinal, and then after that, you're going to have 10 or 11 days to prepare, hopefully for a semifinal. Those game plans better be pretty tight. And those game plans better be, hey, we have an identity. This is who we are. This is the same thing that Ohio State went last year into the college football playoff. Everyone was saying, hey, you have an identity, live up to it. And that's what they did, right? They put game plans together to put their best players in positions to succeed. And I think you're going to see them do that. Actually, not I think. I know you're going to see them do that. I think you're going to have Ryan Day get much more involved in the game planning. Now, everyone's saying that, is Brian Hartline calling plays? I firmly believe Brian Hartline is calling the plays, right? But do I think Ryan Day is going to get more involved now with all the distractions that Brian Hartline might have away from just normal game planning and normal practice? For sure. What leader wouldn't get involved knowing that, hey, someone else is dealing with some distractions and they can't put all of the 100% energy that they normally do into something? That's what Ryan Day is going to do. He knows Matt Patricia and that defensive coaching staff are going to dial things up and will be prepared for that game, because that's what they've done all year. There aren't any distractions on that side. None of those guys are leaving with Brian Hartline, right? So now Ryan Day is sitting there saying, hey, I need to maximize how we prepare on the offense side of the football, but also how we attack these defenses. And there's a lot of time that goes into that. And so I'm excited for Ryan to get back involved in it. And it's nothing against Brian Hartline. You know that, Austin,
Yeah.
It is something that Ryan is just going to step up and be a leader and do what he normally does.
Yeah. And I think he would be doing this, being more involved with the game planning for the college football playoff, whether Brian Hartline was splitting time in Tampa or not, splitting time with South Florida and building a staff and trying to put together a roster and all those other things or not, because that's what he did a year ago, even when Chip Kelly was around.
Austin, I'll even say this. I bet if you asked Ryan Day today, he would tell you he probably wishes he was more involved in the offensive game planning last week, right?
100%.
I think he would say, hey, I put a lot of confidence into Brian Hartline being able to juggle multiple things. And at the end of the day, it's next to impossible to be able to trust Brian Hartline to do all those things, because he does have so much going on. He's got to build out an entire staff. He's got to make sure his recruits sign. He knows the portal's coming up. Like, he's got so many different things that Ryan Day would tell you, hey, listen, that's on me. I should have stepped up and helped Brian Hartline prepare more for that game. And so I think everyone takes that, and they're probably going to take this as a knack on Brian, that we're saying, hey, Brian, wasn't prepared. Brian wasn't doing what he's supposed to be doing. That's not the case at all. There are just so many things that go on behind closed doors that people don't realize.
Yeah. And I don't mean it as an indictment of Brian Hartline or a criticism of him trying to split his time. Very few people have been given as much blood, sweat, and tears over the last 2 decades to Ohio State as Brian Hartline. I mean, on the field and as a coach, the impact he's made. So no one, and I can tell you for sure, watching him leave the coaching box and get in the elevator to go down to the field, how emotionally he took that loss and how much responsibility was clearly weighing on his shoulders. Like, there's there's nobody that's going to feel any worse for Ohio State losing a game like that than Brian Hartline. And Ryan Day's not passing the buck to him either. That conversation, in the Woody on Sunday, Zach was like pretty direct that everyone had to take accountability for it. And the coaching staff was not spared from that at all. And Ryan Day was not excluding himself from that conversation. So, that's another part of this, that when you think back to the loss to Michigan a year ago and the meeting that the team had and everything else that they had when they hashed it out and came together and ended that with arms locked and prayers and eyes forward, I don't think this team had to do it to that extent. They lost 13-10 to a really good team, and they know that there were a lot of other extenuating circumstances and that they were maybe one or two plays in all three phases from winning that game and accomplishing what they wanted. I don't think that they have to view this as like being very far away, and the coaching staff is not putting it on the players. So that's all the process that they've been through a year ago. I think even though so many of these guys had to be replaced, is going to carry over to this. Now we'll find out on December 31st, but that would be my expectation.
If anyone thinks what happened Saturday night is anything close to what happened last year against Michigan and the fallout of the locker room and, the coming to Jesus meetings that books have been written about now, if anyone thinks this is anything close to that, they could not be farther off. Right? Like there is no turmoil. There are no pointing fingers. There are no issues inside the Woody Hayes. There's just a lot of pissed off people that feel like a Big Ten championship got stolen from them. That's it. Right. And so now those guys came out, and guess what? You're not going to win every single round in a heavyweight fight. Right. But you sure as hell hope that the rounds that count, you're freaking swinging and you're winning them. And Ohio State knows there was a big round that they just lost. And so they're going to come out swinging, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who want to be holding up that football for that national championship again at the end of the year. They're going to be the ones who want to send a message to the rest of the country like, hey, listen, that night on December 6th wasn't our night, right? But that's not who we are, and we're going to finish things the right way. So it's a completely different situation from last year to this year. And to be honest, I've said it multiple times on this show already. If there was one time for that to happen and to piss off an Ohio State football team, it was that time Saturday night. And guess what? As a diehard fan and a huge supporter, that team's going to be dangerous, right? And the rest of college football should be actually probably pretty pissed off at Indiana that they did that to the Buckeyes, because it's bad for the rest of the teams in that college football playoff.
I agree with you. You were talking about, winning the rounds that count and throwing those punches. And I just couldn't help but thinking that you don't want it to get to a referee scorecard, because Kenyatta Jackson can tell you that you're not going to get any favors. I don't know. It had to be 7 times, Zach. He had to be held at least 7 times.
Here's the other thing. And people hear me bitch about refs all the time, right? And I will hold my hand up and say that I am probably harder on referees than I should be. Okay. But my time of playing football, and I was one of those players that was pretty vocal on the field, whether that be with the other team, with my players, or with referees. And there were a lot of times I had a lot of great relationships with referees, and I would run my mouth and defend my guys till the day, till the clock hit 0, right?
Yep.
I was always told time and time again, there's going to be a penalty on every freaking play, and we can throw it, right? And I get it. We are not going to throw a flag until it affects the play, and it affects it in a big way. So I'm like, okay, guess what? You could call holding inside on defensive linemen, offensive linemen on linebackers when they're trying to shed it all the time. But guess what? If it barely affects the play, or you're getting off and you're right, guess what? It is what it is. When you are blatantly pulling someone or holding someone from getting to the quarterback for a sack, that is affecting the play. I mean, that could not be any more straightforward in the referee's face. In the times it happened, Austin, it happened in between 2 referees that are behind the football. And why They don't throw it. I don't get it. If they had the mindset of we're going to let the guys play, which guess what? Conference championship game, college football playoff, I get it. Let the guys play. But if you were going to do that, why the hell are you going to throw that defensive pass interference call against Lorenzo Styles early in the game? Because guess what? To me, that sure as hell was ticky-tacky. And if you're going to let the guys play, that should not have been defensive pass interference. So it blows my mind. And maybe even if you let one of them go, Austin, okay.
Yeah.
But for there to be 5, 6, 7 blatant holding calls, I don't understand it, man. Like there needs to be it. This goes back. I've had so many conversations outside of this show with you, with other people. The entire college football needs to be completely revamped, right? And we talked about it last night at 2 o'clock in the morning.
We sure did.
Yeah. There needs to be, everything needs to be revamped from recruiting to playoffs to there needs to be a collective bargaining agreement. There needs to be a commissioner. There needs to be a players union. There needs to be structure everywhere. And not only does it get that, because recruiting, everything else is completely asinine the way it is and ass backwards, the refereeing and the officials in big time college football games, they shouldn't even be refereeing OCC high school football games. They're that bad, right? Yeah. And so how do you hold those guys accountable, especially when there is so much on the line? In college football is the second largest sport in the entire world, right? And there is so much behind it. How do you let those officials literally dictate the outcome of a game? That's what blows my mind. There's no accountability to those guys. Guess what? A player's running over the middle and a safety tries to go make a play, wants to jar the ball loose, and his head gets in it. What happens? He gets ejected and has to sit out, right? Possibly in an entire game. What happens when an official misses a blatant call? Nothing. Guess what? He's still getting a paycheck.
Pick up your check next week.
Yep. Yeah. Getting a paycheck. And guess what? He's working a job next week. There is no accountability whatsoever, and it just drives me crazy. In any job you go to, doesn't matter what you do, in any job, there's accountability for your job. Officials don't have any accountability. There are no repercussions if they blatantly miss a call. And I don't understand how you get around it. Like, there's got to be a revamping, and I could keep on going. Like, I don't know if it's fines. I don't know if it's suspensions. I don't know what it is, but they have to be graded, and there has to be an accountability from that standpoint. Sorry, that's my rant.
Nope, you heard it here first. Zach Boren for college football commissioner, and I fully endorse him for that position. I can't wait. He's also got some ideas for the playoff, the way that it's going to be structured. Maybe we'll get into that as this month rolls along, because Ohio State is heading into the college football playoff. They are the number 2 seed. They will play in the Cotton Bowl on New Year's Eve against either Texas A&M or Miami. We'll get more into that matchup probably next Monday on a Boren Blitz, but for now,
real quick. Yeah. We're 24 hours in to the selection. Who do you want to play on New Year's Eve?
Who do I want to play on New Year's Eve? I think both matchups are imminently winnable for Ohio State. I think if you had to pick a better matchup, I think Miami is a better team than Texas A&M. So
you'd rather play Texas A&M.
I think if that works out that way. Now, the flip side does that get neutralized because it's in AT&T Stadium at Jerry World, and Texas A&M could have a huge crowd? I don't know. We just saw Ohio State beat Texas there last year, so maybe that doesn't matter. But I think both quarterbacks for me, as we're thinking about this 24 hours in, Zach, are like prone to mistakes. And if you give Matt Patricia this extra time to prepare, I'd be really surprised that they weren't able to beat both of those teams and shut them down the same way that they did, really, Fernando Mendoza in Indiana, which is 13 points on Saturday night. So I don't think either one of those teams give me a ton of concern for Ohio State. I'm curious where you're at on that. I'm picking Miami to win the game.
Okay, fair enough. It was quick. We're going to dive into it at a later time. I just wanted your quick thoughts on who you want to play. That was it.
I know you don't care because you'll play anyone at any time.
For sure. But I would love to play Miami just because I think Miami is one of those programs right now. When I start talking about college football, and I just went on my rant of teams that are programs that are doing things the wrong way and could not be more slimy car salesmen behind closed doors, it's Miami. So I would love a crack at Miami just to put them in their place.
I thought you might say that. So we'll get into more of that as we roll along here in December. Ohio State, again, one of those goals has slipped away from them, but a big one is still out there for them, and they are going to begin those preparations for the college football playoff right away. And we will follow it along all month long on the Austin and Berm Show, presented by Waterworks. Thanks so much for joining us on a Monday. It was a Boren Blitz. I know it wasn't the most easy one to get through or painless for Ohio State fans, but there's going to be an opportunity to turn it back around just like this team did in 2024. For Zach Boren, I am Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you later.